A man sits in a jail cell. 1870s America. He's not chained, not restrained in any way. Guards are watching him. And then he's gone. No tunnel. No bribed warden. No bent bars. The official report states that guards refused to re-enter the cell block because they believe the prisoner had literally become a ghost. That report is real. The escape is real, and it wasn't a one-off glitch in history. It happened across 2,000 years. In Rome, in medieval France, in 21st century Brazil, because iron bars are completely useless against one specific weapon. And that weapon is already inside every single person holding the keys. His name was William Ellsworth Hicks, convicted criminal, held in an American county jail in the 1870s. By any measure, unremarkable, except for what he did next, which was either the most desperate or the most brilliant thing a prisoner has ever attempted. It started with moaning. Not screaming, moaning. Low, rhythmic, in the middle of the night. Then he stopped eating. Left his food completely untouched, day after day. He began speaking in a voice guards described as not his own. Distorted, wrong, like something talking through a bad telephone that hadn't been invented yet. Then came the floating. Guards swore they saw him hovering near his cell door, a few inches off the ground. What he was actually doing was standing on objects he'd hidden under his clothing, in prized platform shoes, but in dim gaslight at 3 in the morning after weeks of moaning. You see what you're already afraid of, guards started whispering. The whispers became stories, the stories became certainty. One morning, the cell was empty, and the men with the weapons and the keys stood outside the door and would not go back in. William Ellsworth Hicks was gone. But here's what nobody asks about the Hicks story. Why did it work? Grown men. Armed. Trained to manage dangerous people. Defeated by one unarmed man doing community theatre in a jail cell. To understand that, you have to go back roughly 1800 years to a Roman prison where almost the exact same trick was pulled first. Roman jailers weren't just casually superstitious, they were institutionally, professionally terrified of supernatural contamination. The lemias, restless malevolent spirits of the dead, weren't mere folk belief. They were baked into Roman civic religion. There were official state festivals just to appease them, 3 per year. The state took this seriously. Prisons made this worse. The Tullianum, Rome's most notorious holding pit, was already considered a liminal space, a threshold between the living and the dead. Prisoners went in and didn't come out. Guards assigned there knew they were standing at the edge of something. That belief was the architecture before a single stone was laid. One account from the 1st century describes a prisoner in the Tullianum who stopped responding, stopped moving, stopped eating. When guards finally checked, he was cold to the touch, lightly from pressing himself against the stone floor for hours. He had convinced them he was already dead. Not dying. Dead. A procedural standoff followed. Who touches a contaminated corpse? While they argued, his people came and got him, the most powerful empire in the Western world. And one man lying very still on a cold floor broke their entire security apparatus. Rome eventually tried to fix this. They assigned jailers specifically desensitized to death, men who handled corpses professionally, former undertakers, mortuary workers. And it still didn't fully work, because the Middle Ages were about to make the superstition problem dramatically, catastrophically worse. Medieval dungeon designers, lords, architects, castle builders deliberately made their prisons feel supernatural. Perpetual darkness. Acoustics engineered so any sound distorted into something resembling a wail, locations chosen near graveyards or execution grounds, because a terrified prisoner doesn't try to escape. Brilliant design. Catastrophic flaw. The guards were just as terrified. You cannot engineer a space to feel haunted and then expect only the prisoners to feel it. Fear doesn't check job titles. The very atmosphere meant to break the prisoners was quietly breaking the people holding the keys at the same time. In 13th century France, a documented account describes a prisoner who began producing sounds, likely exploiting those same acoustic properties. The guards interpreted as multiple voices. A chorus, something with no body. Guards abandoned their post entirely. The prisoner walked through an unattended door. The dungeon's own horror swallowed itself. A 15th century English case is even more direct. A prisoner began leaving ritualistic-looking marks on cell walls, combined with increasingly erratic non-human behavior. Within a week, 2 guards refused their assignment, citing unnatural occupation. By the time replacements arrived, the prisoner was 3 days gone, defeated by some scratches on a wall. So by the time William Ellsworth Hicks is moaning in his 1870s cell, he isn't improvising. He's unknowingly executing a 2,000-year-old exploit that has worked across 3 continents and a dozen different legal systems. But he wasn't even the most successful ghost prisoner of his century. That title belongs to a woman. Her escape was so effective, it changed state law. The 1850s American South, a female prisoner. Her name was deliberately omitted from official records, which tells you something about how badly authorities wanted this story to disappear, was being held awaiting sentencing. She was genuinely ill, and she noticed how the guards responded to that. She stopped moving, slowed her breathing to almost nothing, used every symptom of her real illness and pushed it into performance. Then she appeared to die. Right there in her cell. Guards were summoned. They did not touch her, because examining a female body, even a dead one, was a serious social transgression. The rules of propriety became bars. But this time, they held the guards. She was moved to a holding room to await the women who would prepare the body. She lay motionless for hours. That night, she walked out. Not through a secret passage, through a door nobody was watching, because nobody watches a corpse. She had leveraged 2 fears simultaneously, the supernatural dread of death and the social terror of impropriety. The legal response was immediate and revealing. The state passed updated protocols requiring formal medical certification of prisoner deaths before anybody could be moved. A law written because one woman lay still long enough. Every escape in this lineage worked the same way, by finding a social anxiety so powerful the jailers couldn't admit it, let alone overcome it. Here's why this works every time. Your brain has 2 threat response systems. One is slow, rational, evidence-based, the system that knows ghosts aren't real. The other is ancient, fast, and operates on pattern recognition so crude it can't tell a shadow from a predator. That system evolved over millions of years. It does not take requests. The second system doesn't care that you're a trained guard. It doesn't care that you have a weapon. The moment something in your environment matches its threat templates, wrong sounds, wrong movement, wrong cold, it fires faster than conscious thought can intercept it. You feel the fear before you have a chance to decide. The fear is irrational, but individual guards might have shaken it off. What made these escapes work wasn't tricking one person, it was social contagion. Solomon Asch proved in the 1950s that humans override their own perception to match the group. Once one guard believes something is wrong, the next guard's threshold drops. Then the next. Fear spreads faster than any rational counter-argument. These prisoners weren't tricking individuals. They were hijacking a collective nervous system. One performance, one seed of belief, and the institution's own social architecture did the rest, which raises an uncomfortable question. If this exploit is this old and this reliable, are prisons still vulnerable? The answer is going to bother you. Haiti, 1960s. Prisoners in a Port-au-Prince facility exploited guard belief in voodoo, not by performing rituals, but by making guards believe they had already performed them. Specific objects arranged in specific ways. Guards who believed the prisoner had called something into the cell began finding reasons to stay out. Free documented transfers were delayed by days because staff would not enter cells they considered spiritually compromised. Brazil, 2009. A single inmate outside Recife convinced guards he was experiencing possession, convulsions, voice changes, apparent unawareness of pain. The behavioral display caused enough institutional chaos that response protocols collapsed. In the confusion, 3 men walked out of a facility with a documented security budget of over $2 million. The exploit is ancient. The prison was modern. The outcome was identical. Look at the official reports from both incidents. Security breach due to personnel failure. DART protocol not followed. The word superstition never appears. The word fear never appears. Because admitting that trained officers were defeated by supernatural belief would require admitting that no amount of training fully overwrites 2,000 years of wiring. The exploit is still running. It just gets different paperwork. When William Ellsworth Hicks was eventually recaptured and someone finally asked him why his ghost act worked, he said something that stopped the interviewer completely. He said, "I didn't scare them with a ghost. I reminded them they were already scared of one." He hadn't created the fear. He'd given guards permission to act on a terror they walked in with every single shift. The moaning, the floating, the untouched food. None of it manufactured something new. All of it simply unlocked something already there, waiting. That's true of every escape in this 2,000-year lineage. The Roman prisoner, the medieval man, the woman who held her breath until the room emptied. None of them broke the prison. They broke the agreement between people that the bars and locks were enough, that the institution was real, its authority solid, the roles of prisoner and guard fixed. That agreement is the actual prison. And it turns out that agreement is far more fragile than iron. Go back to that opening image. A man in a cell, watched, unrestrained, then gone. The real punchline isn't that he escaped. It's that every institution built to hold people is ultimately held together by collective belief. The moment one person refuses to share that belief convincingly enough, the walls become optional. So here's the question that's going to sit with you. What other agreements are you inside of right now that you simply never thought to question? What walls are you not testing because everyone around you has agreed, without ever saying it out loud, that they're solid? If that question is uncomfortable, good.